We're just trying to change the world here, people.
Oh, really?
The Facebooking and the tweeting and the Instagramming, all that would not exist without our understanding of science.
It's amazing how you took that as an insult.
You mean true for you is different from true for anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely, because I can't
Something's
prove...
either got to be true or not.
I can't... No.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is ORly Radio, show 20 for Friday, August 22nd, 2014, the Mental Health Special. We're planning on going through the DSM, which, for those that are not involved in the biz, that's the Diagnostic Criteria and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders by the American Psychiatric Association. But so since I've introduced the topic, I might as well introduce everyone else. I'm Andy.
I'm David.
I'm Mike.
Anne.
And Dawn.
Yay!
Yay!
Coffee or something, you know, pep you up.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the diagnostic codes.
We need to plan that out better because I thought you were actually going to introduce us,
No.
and then you stopped.
That's right. Want to do it again?
Nah, it's good. We're good.
Now we're done? Okay.
Let's roll.
The moment's over.
So we were supposed to also have a special guest, but she has no-called, no-showed. I'm not sure what her status is. Maybe we'll just do a follow-up, do a 0.5 release of the show at some point to see if...
We hope she's okay.
Yeah, we hope she's okay. She was having, some issues. I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to divulge too much of her private affairs out there for everyone in the world. Yet. I'd let her do that. So there is one article that might be of interest before we actually get into our own brains. Let's think about making some artificial brains. So apparently, let's see, what have they been doing? Was it IBM? No, this isn't IBM. This is a different chip.
It's a computer chip.
Brain-inspired...
Where'd you put the brains?
It's right at the top. Brain-inspired computer chip mimics 1 million neurons. By processing data in parallel, device could improve pattern recognition. Because, well, our brains are big pattern recognition machines, so that's pretty much what they're trying to get computers to mimic in as much reality as they can. It's interesting. You know, they have to get a lot of neurons. I know that also IBM was working on an artificial brain. I think an awful lot more than 1 million neurons in that particular one. But this is becoming a real reality. They're actually making something that could have a model of cognition.
I hope that the chief innovator is named Dyson, secretly, just to keep with the Terminator lore.
Yeah. I don't know.
See, that's not the way I went with it. I thought you were talking about the creator of the Dyson vacuum creating artificial intelligence.
I hear Dyson and I think Dyson Sphere.
Yes.
You know, from Freeman Dyson. But, you know, obviously, there's an awful lot of...
created the computer.
Yes.
Dysons are creative, I guess. You know.
Yes, a learning computer. Now, would we have to deal with a computer getting depressed?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It's subject to the same errors in manufacturing.
All right, yeah, errors in manufacturing. I like that. That's a good way of putting it.
That's clever.
There's
That's clever. I do like that. Yeah.
Norman, the depressed robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Martin, that's right.
Marvin.
I'm sorry.
Marvin, the depressed robot. Well,
Marvin the paranoid android.
Underutilized.
Additional title.
Which, you know, a lot of humans can appreciate being underutilized.
Ain't that the truth? Yes.
With a brain the size of the planet,
I can calculate pi to the last digit, but you want me to schedule your appointments. Thank you.
Yes. Exactly. So with mental health, obviously, we're. I was planning this episode long before one of our icons decided to take his own life due to a lot going on in his life, and that would be Robin Williams. So he committed suicide. He was also apparently coming down with early onset of Parkinson's, and well, he'd been suffering mental illness and breakdowns throughout his entire life, and he had a rough childhood. And I'm not really here to diagnose his life, but just to point out that he wasn't the reason that we're talking about this. We're talking about this because it's an issue.
Yes.
He's a great... In fact, his death has had an enormous catalyzing effect on social media, on... Geez, everybody you talk to has been touched in some way by
work that he did.
Yeah, by all of his work. I mean, we can all think of a movie that we love.
Oh, yeah.
That has Robin Williams in it.
Or a few, easily.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, multiples.
It puts an exclamation point on this topic.
Yeah.
Certainly does.
Where the funny people sometimes are the most tortured in life, or can be the most tortured in life.
They statistically speaking, they are always the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird cocktails, like high intelligence leading to being
Insanity.
related
It's
to
a razor's edge from insanity.
and the people who are the best at being funny are almost always unstable. It's
Yeah, there was always that meme of, the sad clown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that has never changed. That's always been the way things have worked out for humanity. Those that have the ability to make us smile are often masking their own sadness, and that is an issue.
It's the Rorschach joke.
but Doc, I am Pagliacci.
Yeah.
That might go over some people's heads.
It might.
It might, but the point is that I read Cracked had an article on this very phenomenon about Robin Williams' suicide and the connection between people who have high artistic talent and mental illness. And there were some really interesting things in there about, and they had some other links, and I was chasing links all day long, and I ran into something from, I don't even remember where I got it now, and I should have saved it, but it was some psychiatrist put forth the theory that the evolution of humor and people who are talented in it is a sort of a mental defense mechanism, because in their heads they're damaged and they're sad and unstable and unhappy, so they're constantly making jokes to try to counterbalance that. That's all it is.
Should I tell the Rorschach joke?
No. Though the research on the topic is limited, there are a couple of competing theories out there. One is from the late New York City psychologist Samuel Janis, who looked at the link between Jewish humor and tragedy. A 1978 article in Time describes his conclusions. Quote, Jewish humor is born of depression and alienation from the general culture. For Jewish comedians, Janis told the recent annual meeting of American Psychological Association, comedy is a defense mechanism to ward off the aggression and hostility of others. So that
explains why there's so many Jewish comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. No matter what you want to say about Zionism and Jewish faith and Jewish culture and racial ethnicities and blah 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 blah. Anybody that has been identified as Jewish has been, at some point in their life, persecuted. I think that's pretty much a universal constant for some stupid reason, but that aggression and hostility has borne an awful lot of humor. And it's certainly a defense mechanism. It's a good one. It is really hard to be sad when you're laughing. I don't know if you've ever tried, but it doesn't. Those two are very mutually exclusive in the brain. They really don't get along well because there's certain endorphins that are just launched when you're laughing that are incompatible with some of the serotonin and dopamine levels in the brain. One's stronger than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Takes less muscles in the face to smile than it does to frown,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. We're kind of meant to be happy in many ways, so it's easy for us to be happy. But boy, when we're unhappy, we kind of lose ourselves. So that's why we're here today. That's why we're talking about this. So what is mental illness? According to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
I don't know why that acronym always makes me laugh a little. It just sounds adorable.
NAMI.
NAMI.
It was just not the Regional Association of Mental Illness.
No, it's national. Yeah, that'd be RAMI, wouldn't it? RAMI. Just ram this home. Anyway, a mental illness is a medical condition that disrupts a person's thinking, feeling, mood, ability to relate to others, and daily functioning. Just as diabetes is a disorder of the pancreas, mental illnesses are medical conditions that often result in diminished capacity for coping with the ordinary demands of life. Serious mental illnesses include major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, your standard OCD, panic disorder, posttraumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder. Mental illnesses can affect persons of any age, race, religion, or income levels. Mental illnesses are not the result of personal weaknesses, lack of character, or poor upbringing. Mental illnesses are treatable. Most people diagnosed with a serious mental illness can experience relief from their symptoms by actively participating in an individual treatment plan. So then, how do you get help?
Oh, I've got a whole brick of things right here.
Reach out.
But well, first you need to know you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is where you get a little mini life story. I was having some real hard times back in college. Couldn't really figure some things out. Got thrown a few interesting curveballs, and that kind of sent me into a bit of a downward spiral. Didn't really know what the hell to do. Now, I had never been in a position like that before, so I didn't really notice any of the signs. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't understand my own position. And as I'm wallowing in what I thought was just self-pity, my mother comes over, which she doesn't typically do, and she told me, "You're depressed. It runs in the family." And then she told me a few other things, and it started to make sense. Of course, this was when I was 21. I'm kind of wondering why it took her so fucking long to actually tell me that depression ran in my family. I was a little curious about that. Didn't know.
Stigma?
Stigma. Probably just a stigma.
Maybe because somebody could be a carrier of it doesn't mean that they could actually represent the condition. I don't know.
Well, the genetics,
maybe.
The genetics of it are not fully understood, but it certainly is not recessive. There's some kind of partial dominance going on in there, because if one parent has it, there's a strong chance that children can inherit it. Of course, the actual genetics and inheritance of mental illness are not fully understood anyway, but they know it's a factor.
And that's largely because neurochemistry is not really widely understood.
Yeah.
Now we have.
Well, it's still a fairly young field, honestly.
Yes.
The ability to delve in and understand and actually see what's going on in real time is still not, we're still not really there.
We're not far removed from having to have exorcisms and drilling holes in our head to release the demons.
Yeah.
50 years?
We're not that far away from it, are we? So really, if we start to really look at it in terms of that, we're almost like in aviation, where in a very short time period we went from flying in rickety things that would have been better held together with duct tape to...
You had to stay low enough that you didn't die while trying to fly your plane.
Yeah, and by low we mean watch out for that tree.
Yeah.
You know, from Kitty Hawk to the moon. You know, that was a short period of time, really. In any thought process, that's a short period of time. So now we look at that into neuroscience. I'll just cover it as neuroscience because there's a lot of people that also have a stigma against the word psychiatric care.
It's 2 words.
Well, I was thinking psychiatry, but unfortunately, my tongue said no and wouldn't say that word. So I went for the full field.
I know. I'm just
I know
joking.
you're giving me shit about it, and that's fine.
It's what I do.
Well, that's fine. I'm here to take everyone's shit. In fact, why aren't you looking at us in the IRC? You should be giving us shit there too, but you're not. It's just us.
The what now?
We have an IRC chat. You didn't know this? If you go out to ORlyRadio.com, right there next to the live stream that you could just hit click.
Oh, right.
Got it. And you know the YouTube is right there, so you can be watching us. And then right next to that is an IRC. You just sign it with an anonymous name, and then you can yell at us.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yell at us.
Yeah. And if you really want to yell at us, you can always call us too and leave us a voicemail, and I'll even play it on air. 470-222-ORLY for ORly or 675. Anyway, so enough of the self-ingratiating promos, and back to the show. So with that, I knew that I was susceptible to depression because it ran in the family. That really, really helped me because then I knew that I wasn't defective. This is how I was made. That comforted me in a weird sort of way.
Yeah.
It provided me with some comfort. It's like, oh, good, I'm not alone in this.
I think it is interesting to me that you say that, oh, good, I'm not defective, whereas to me, looking at it, it's like I am defective. I was made this way. It's not my fault, and that's comforting.
Well, it works.
6 in one, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah, it's the same. You know, it depends on whether or not you think that you're defective because of some abnormality in the way you're made, or it was by design of some type that, well, my parents were like this, so it goes to figure that my design patterns would come from them, and, well, some of those...
In any manufacturing process, there are possibilities of error. And those errors manifest in multitude different ways.
Yes.
I mean, I was asthmatic as a child.
I'm still slightly asthmatic now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these things happen. Of course, my parents aren't asthmatic, so I don't know where that came from. Anyway. So there's a lot of different ways that these things can manifest, and a lot of different ways, obviously, that you can think about yourself in relation to having depression or other mental illness. I think depression is the easiest for the general populace to understand and and at least relate to. You know, there are people, though I think they're lying, that have said they've never been depressed. I think they're lying. I don't think that they understand what they went through at a certain time in their life.
On the spectrum of people, there's a possibility that there's a chemical imbalance where they cannot feel sad, or it's very difficult for them to reach that state.
The problem with that is that the chemical imbalance that causes depression is because of a lack of one chemical and too much of another, and too much of that chemical, and I'm blanking on the names. Too much of that chemical is not lethal. The one that makes you happy is serotonin. If you have too much of that, it can fucking kill you. So I find it very hard to it may be possible, but I would find it very hard to believe that such a condition could exist where you could be operating at a constantly high level of serotonin and not die.
There are 8 chemicals primarily that actually work to regulate moods.
Many number of chemicals.
There's serotonin. This is typically like self-esteem and sleep. Oxytocin, which apparently is trust. the ability to just trust. Melatonin, which is kind of a relaxation.
Helps put you to sleep.
Yeah. Norepinephrine, excitement. That's your adrenaline is right there.
Your EpiPen.
Yeah, epinephrine. It's throws you into overdrive.
Yep. There's endorphins. Of course, that's your painkiller. Gives you that rush of, nothing's going to bother me anymore.
Whatever's in this IV, which I love.
Exactly. That would be the phenylethylamine, which is bliss and infatuation. So you're going to have a lot of that if you're falling in love. You might also have a little acetylcholine, which is alertness.
Hey.
I think I need a little bit more of that in my tea.
Right.
And then, of course, there's, the two that we usually hear, serotonin and its counterpart, dopamine.
Dopamine. That's the other one.
Dopamine is, well, it'll dope you up. That's where that phrase comes from. And it's a reward chemical. Our brains really love dopamine.
I'll turn you into a dope.
Between all of those, you get various levels of happy. Or, if you're missing some of those, you have very low levels of these, especially serotonin, where you're not feeling very, very good about yourself, and you're low on dopamine, so you're not getting rewarded for anything you're doing. You're going to feel like crap. So, after a while, just having the kick in the ass of my mom telling me that I was affected by depression, and that it wasn't my fault, and that it was just, this is something that you're going to go through from time to time. That alone was enough to boost me out of it. So I immediately made some changes in my life and went on about my merry way. It was an interesting ride, I'll tell you that. Fast forward some years, and I was having trouble with work. And I was staring at my computer, knowing that I had things to do, but hating doing it so much that I literally passed out at the screen. I shut down completely. I could not work. I could not do it.
Wow.
So work suffered. Yeah. Work suffered a bit, and I went to my general practitioner and had a conversation with him, and he prescribed Wellbutrin, which is a lovely antidepressant, and based on what I told him, it fit many of the criteria. I always felt tired, really hard time waking up, never feeling awake enough to do anything. There were a lot of different symptoms, but by giving him the shopping list of things that were wrong, the things that I had identified in myself, because after being told that I did have a little bit of depression in the family, I took notice of my own actions. This is how I used to be, and this is how I am now, and there's some differences here. But I had to go kind of back into the Wayback Machine to figure all that out, because these things don't happen overnight.
It's like boiling a frog in water.
Yeah, chemical imbalances, they take a long time to kind of build up in your system. So, once that finally happened, and I hit the wall, basically, of, okay, I'm shutting down at work. I literally cannot do this. I have to do something. So I got on Wellbutrin. And it was really weird, because it wasn't a high enough dosage. I was on 75 milligrams. And the most bizarre thing was I was arguing with my head.
Mm-hmm.
I felt depressed. I felt down. And then there was like this other voice in my head saying, no, that's fine. You're cool. That's fine. No, you're fine. So the chemical, I could feel the chemical arguing with the other chemicals in my brain.
Yeah.
So
stuff didn't bother
I
you
realized,
as much.
okay, it's working.
Sort of.
Okay, Doc, I need a little more, I think. And I told him what was going on there. again, it starts with a really good conversation and a good doctor. And he said, okay, we'll up the dosage. Bam. And if you've ever had glasses and you've been a long time without them, and the very first time that you go get your eyes checked, and the doctor finally, gives you the right, better one, better two, better one, better two, etc. Darker, lighter.
You play that whole dance.
Yeah, you've played all that, and then he goes back and okay, look, and it's like, oh my God, I can see.
Everything's so bright.
It's not a weird blob anymore.
The colors.
What the hell? That's a dumpster over there. I didn't know that was a dumpster. True story. I didn't know it was a dumpster. Okay. Yeah.
Was it Bush?
It was amazing. Yeah, I do have glasses right here. Just I'm not wearing them here. So it was an amazing experience, and I suddenly felt like myself again. It was bizarre. Now I also have another odd phenomenon in my own self is that I didn't have to be on that for the rest of my life. Eventually, I found that it wasn't really working anymore.
Yeah, usually it doesn't.
Yeah. So I just kind of gradually took myself off of it. Obviously, you shouldn't do that. I did a bad thing by doing that without consulting my physician. I got lucky. Okay. So don't do that.
If you stop taking it, you go through. It's horrible.
Yeah. But in that I was lucky, I didn't have to be on it anymore. And I haven't gone back to it since. There have been times, though, that I think, maybe I should. But, I'll just, instead of self-medicating or doing anything like that, I'll just try to change my routine, to change the things I do, change my location, don't work in the same location anymore. You can kind of change your life up a little bit. Individual results may vary widely. There's no silver bullet. I was very lucky in that the first medication that he gave me actually had an effect on me. I was very, very lucky.
Yeah. Because a lot of times it's just guesswork, basically.
You are literally throwing things at the wall until something sticks. I went through 5 medications before I found one that had any effect.
Yeah.
Because there's 8 different chemicals in your brain it could be. And it could be more than one, potentially.
And it could be simply that your body does not react to that medication. It's like it doesn't. What is this chemical? I don't care. These things happen.
It's a chemistry inside your body.
Reject your reality.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
Thank you, Adam Savage.
I mean, I've noticed too. If I've taken something for a long time, it doesn't seem effective for a long time, so I'll usually have to, switch to something different.
Yeah, you build up a resistance to it.
Yeah, you do. You really do. So you constantly have to be noticing when you're going down that bad path and that you probably need to change your medicine to something else, Yeah,
and it really helps to have people around you that are also observing, and people that you'll listen to.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there that they'll tell you anything you want to know about yourself, and a lot of things you don't want to know about yourself. And
you look like shit.
You call those people true friends because they'll tell you the truth.
Family members.
Not necessarily.
I don't listen to my
Not necessarily your
says
family.
anything. Because my family doesn't believe in mental illness. So.
Wow, it's a good thing.
Are they going to lay on hands? Because that's a paladin.
Science exists without.
That's a common paladin spell.
It was funny. It was like the person I was married to before was the same way. He thought that when I was going to counseling and taking antidepressants and stuff like that, that it was ridiculous. It was garbage, and just went on and on about it, you know.
Wow, that's really supportive.
Yeah, and he also thought me going to college at night. I was working full time during the day. That was a waste of time too.
Going to college is a waste of time?
So we're not married anymore.
And you're not together anymore? That's a total shocker.
I'm shocked. Really.
I can't imagine why.
It's just funny how some people think that you can just turn stuff off like a light switch, you know? Oh, just don't think about that anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Telling a depressed person to stop being sad is like putting a full bottle of 21-year-old scotch in front of an alcoholic and saying, "Don't drink that."
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. We don't have a choice.
And it's
more like telling someone, "Okay, stop breathing air."
Yeah, just stop breathing. You don't need to breathe.
And I said to him, I'm like, I can't just do that. I don't understand what you're saying. Don't think about it anymore. I'm like, I don't. How do you do that? I wasn't trying to be a smart ass. I was like, I want to know how to not torture myself.
These magical ways that you have of not thinking about things.
He's like, just don't think about it. I'm like,
yeah.
Just,
well, that's a responsive if you don't have a serious chemical imbalance in your brain and you don't believe in science.
Yeah.
Or chemistry, or understand that your body is a giant electrochemical machine that's trying to maintain a balance, and sometimes the balance it thinks it should be in is not the best balance. It's not optimal for you.
Or even have any degree of empathy whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's that.
The concept that and here's the thing that drives me nuts about this is that people. I get that if you don't have one of these conditions, and yes, there are a lot of people with depression out there. It's a large percent of this population, but there's far more people out there who are perfectly normal. And in the case of, and a lot of people ask, well, what is normal when it comes to the human condition? Well, in the case of things like brain chemistry, there are certain ranges. If the needle falls within this range somewhere, you are in the most balanced state, and that is normal. There can be normal in scientific terms in the case of this. It's just like with diabetes. Normal is a range of insulin here.
Yeah.
If you're in there, you're normal. So
kind of like a spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
be on one end, be on the other end,
and things go wrong. Things go wrong either way.
And the spectrum is like every facet of your life, from sexuality to happiness to
there's
just
ranges.
Yeah.
And the thing
normalcy in your reproductive organs to how often you get blocked up.
The thing that drives me nuts is that because everyone is a little different, and most everybody has a little something wrong with them, and how I don't understand how you can know all this, and you can see differences in people's health and how people function, and then as soon as it gets into the mental health category, people suddenly cannot understand that this person is simply different. You see, if you see someone who's a diabetic, you don't walk up to them and say, "Stop being a diabetic." You don't fucking do that. But someone with a mental illness, you have the gall to act like just because they're different from you, their life experience is not valid. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Just don't think about your diabetes anymore.
Yeah. I am reminded of something that my little league coach said that to me. He said, "Walk it off." When I was in the jaw by a line drive.
Oh.
It dislocated my jaw, and he said, "Walk it off." I flipped the bird, and I walked off.
Yeah. No,
how you do it.
In some cases in sports, there is such a thing as simply walking it off. If you get. I mean, I played soccer, and I got kicked in the shins and things like that, and yet there are injuries that you can just if you walk on it, and you keep circulation going, and you just try to be as normal as possible. That actually promotes healing, but that doesn't always fucking work.
No. No,
No.
it doesn't work for head injuries.
It certainly doesn't work for head injury.
When you get hit so hard that the crowd goes, ooh.
That's a good sign that you should probably go take a breather.
He should be walked off, not
You're done
walked
for.
off.
You're
You
done
should
for
probably
the night.
go to the ER.
Yeah, something along those lines.
But
So we have some statistics.
We like statistics. Statistics are good science.
what was that? What was that?
Some statistics.
No, there's something in the middle there. Yeah. That was good.
I spat that out. Anyway, numbers of Americans affected by mental illness. Of course, yes, we're in America, so we're going to be a little North American-centric here.
No.
Also, I think we may have a really good degree of mental illness in this country.
Yeah, we certainly do.
Okay, 1 in 4 adults, approximately 61.5 million Americans, experience mental illness in a given year. 1 in 17, or about 13.6 million, live with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, major depression, or bipolar disorder. That's a lot.
Now, when you compare it to the population in the United States, which is what 500 million or something like that, it's not a lot. But that's
300.
300 million. Thank you. It doesn't
About
seem like a lot,
300.
but we're still in the millions, people.
Well, 1 in 4 adults. That's a quarter of the population.
60 million people.
Yeah. Okay. In this group of 5 people, how many of us have suffered mental illness within our lives?
Probably.
Almost my whole freaking life, basically.
Okay. So we're a good sampling here, I think.
That's 4 out of 5.
That's why we get along so well.
There you go. Yes, we have a.
Mine just hasn't been diagnosed yet.
Well, we can get to the DSM here in a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just assuming that
Which is
back
really
a while.
It's a hypochondriac's wet dream.
I
Really.
hate going through the DSM. I hate it.
It's
Does
difficult.
that mean, well, you're not a hypochondriac, so you can mark one off the list.
There you go.
I mean,
Dick.
I will say that I had a stigma with the whole thing with mental illness. Like when I was in high school and my mom tried to commit suicide, I thought she was weak and, she was on medication and stuff like that. And I thought I had the whole thing where you just snap out of it, or that whole stupid thing. So, I mean, I've been on both sides of the spectrum.
There you go.
And it's like, until I started having problems myself, where it was hard to function, just everyday functioning, getting up, just brushing your teeth. And it's crazy that you talk about not being able to function at work, because that just happened to me just recently, where I pretty much kind of shut down. I couldn't even, to do the simplest tasks, like just driving my car to work or whatever. It was like, and then somebody tried to talk to me about work stuff, and I would just act like I know what they were talking about, but I didn't have a clue what they were saying. It was like I was in a fog.
And
I don't know how to
switch into
describe it.
third-person view and just watch your body kind of go through and,
Almost like you're paralyzed. I don't know how else to describe it. And you're trying to sit there and trying to make yourself reason and do things that you should be doing, but you're you just...
Yeah, instead you're just listening to Charlie Brown's parents.
And I would be sitting there at the computer, and then watching everybody around me, working so fast, and wow, they make really quick decisions, and I'm sitting there just trying to read one sentence and focus on it, and then I just...
That may be a good indicator that you either need to get some help or you need to get another job.
Yeah,
Or a different prescription.
we had some of that going on too, but
Go
yeah.
either way. Yeah.
There was a point, I had a point in time in my life where I hated my job so much I literally had an eye twitch. And when I put in my notice that I was going to leave the job, my eye twitch went away. Which was how I knew it was the job. I was like, holy shit, that's a real thing.
That is a real
I'd be sitting there at work why is my eye twitching? Fuck.
Your people make my eyes twitch.
Or you're just, or if you...
I literally had the eye twitch. My eye was just like,
Or if you have that problem where you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of assholes, you may not have may not actually have a mental illness. You're surrounding yourself with assholes.
Surrounded by assholes.
That's right. You may have
fuck these people, man.
Keep firing, assholes.
We're surrounded.
Is it my turn yet? Please let it be my turn.
Approximately 20% of state prisoners and 21% of local jail prisoners have a, quote, recent history of a mental health condition.
Yeah. That's a fair number.
That's a lot.
That's
a lot.
That's more than fair.
It kind of makes you want to stay on the straight and narrow.
Well,
not to be part of that statistic.
Now, correlation and causation. These are our friends here, of course. Mm-hmm. We can't necessarily, see that the correlation is the cause.
No.
No, the statistics have shown that it is not.
Sometimes
people with mental illness are more likely to be stable than the general population. The problem you run into is that because the mental health care and support system in this country fucking sucks, they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, there used to be a mental health system in this country that was supposedly relatively good. They tried. They didn't have a lot of information. They didn't have the knowledge that they have today. But it's been all but basically torn down.
Yeah, and it started being torn down. When did that happen? Oh yeah, during the Reagan administration.
Yeah. We can of course just go through the history books and figure out when those things happened. I mean, that's public record. So, you don't have to take our word for it. In fact, please
just research what happened to the mental health systems in this country.
Yeah, when
they were versus what they are.
And that's where we have a lot of the stigma, because it was made where we all had to feel bad about feeling bad.
Yeah.
And we
all had to feel bad about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Pray away the gay.
And also, there's a lot of people that would lose their security clearance because they had a mental breakdown of some type. And as soon as they sought help, they lost their security clearance. Then they'd lose their job. And
it was a downward spiral.
Yeah, a downward spiral. And there was no support structure in place to keep these people well. Because suddenly you're now a security risk because here's the wonderful word that we need to avoid, like the plague. Crazy. Mm-hmm. It ended up being that catch-all.
Oh, you're crazy. You can't do this. They still do that shit today. It's the whole reason I'm not in the Navy anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So obviously there is a stigma. If you don't think that there is, then you haven't been paying any attention, and you're the kind of person that is going to tell somebody that gets a head injury to walk it off.
You are the part of the problem, not the solution.
Yeah.
Right.
And
without recognizing what the actual issue is.
Yeah. And if you are that person, you might consider that one day you also might end up getting depressed.
Exactly.
End up with a problem.
That's exactly what happened to me, because you could sit here and talk about it, and then one day you get, bam, hit in the face. Well, not a ball, but you're like, you can't function.
2 balls? No,
it could be 2 balls.
I mean, that happened to me. I think I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I started. I don't know how to describe it. Going crazy, basically. Not.
Yeah, I
couldn't function.
I understand why you say avoid that word, Andy, but I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. Yeah, I'm crazy. Deal with it.
I do. I think that crazy is interesting and fun. I mean, I don't want to be like everybody else.
You're so crazy. You're so crazy.
It's one of those things. It is another thing people misunderstand about chronic conditions. the majority of people who have a chronic condition of any kind, diabetes, for example, since it keeps coming up as a good comparison point, it's genetic. You have it all your life. You can't catch it. You can't develop it. Well, you can for some cases, but for the most part, for the most part, it's a binary thing. You have it or you don't. But that's not always the case. Like allergies, a lot of people think you have allergies, you don't. What you don't understand is your body is constantly changing. Every 7 years or so, you have a whole new set of cells in every system of your body. So it is a brand new body. And these manufacturing defects, as Dave so eloquently put it, can arise during that 7-year reconstruction of your body. So yeah, you could wake up one day and have an allergy, or have a mental illness.
Yep.
And that sucks for you.
Or you might have had a mental illness and it might have phased out.
It could phase out. Yeah,
Some of the lesser ones can sort of fade away over time.
Yeah. And there's other treatment methods that can help people cope and help people completely eliminate it too. It is possible, not for everything.
Yeah.
But
it all depends on what part of the spectrum that you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big spectrum. In fact, the book is about 970 pages.
It's not exactly light reading.
No, it's not light reading. And
you don't go for the decaf on this one. You go for the straight up Cuban coffee where it's like muddy, thick, syrupy consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, you might end up with an allergy. My mother, she's now reaching her 7th decade on the planet.
Oh, man, your mother's 700 years old. Holy shit, dude. 7 centuries. Imagine what she's seen.
Boy, I wish, but that would explain a few things too. She's developed allergies to antibiotics.
Ooh.
Yep.
The only antibiotic that she is not allergic to at this phase in her life is the one that works against bubonic plague.
Well, that's good.
Well, if the plague ever gets loose, she'll be scot-free.
Yeah.
Is it the doxycycline, or is it
I don't.
one that
There's so many antibiotics.
Anthrax?
Amoxicillin, tetracycline, deoxycycline. There's a bunch.
You're saying words right now. Those are certainly words you were saying.
These are words with many syllables,
Well,
and she's allergic to them.
my prepper self looked up where to get antibiotics that were not from a pharmacist, so that you could store them.
So that you can survive should they.
So you could survive should the end happen.
Oh.
Antibiotics are important things to have in an emergency situation.
They are. So on to the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, also known as the DSM-5. This book is published periodically. Obviously, this is the 5th edition, and it was published in 2013 by the American Psychiatric Association. There are 3 sections. We're going to only really examine section 2, and that would be the diagnostic criteria and codes. There are 20 sections in here. There's a couple more, but they're more talking about how those relate to the other sections. So I just removed those. So there's 20 sections here. You guys want to take 4 at a time?
Sure. That sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Sure.
So
Reading out loud from the beginning.
from the beginning.
I think if we tried to read this thing out loud, it would take way too long.
Well, we're only going.
You need to read them in a singing voice.
That
Spritz.
might be a little better.
And put it up to 500 words a minute.
I don't know that we can do that. It's going to be a little sing-songy. Now, all I've done here is I kind of took a couple of snippets from the initial part of each of these sections that kind of describes the section itself.
Yes.
And for us laymen that are not the professionals in the mental health biz,
For everyone watching, we are laymen who are not in the professional health biz.
For nearly everyone, we are you. Okay? So this is really just to help you know the gist of what a professional is going to look at when they are taking a look at your own set of circumstances and try to figure out a treatment method for you. Because to treat you, they have to identify what's wrong with you.
And
yes.
Unlike physical illnesses where you can do blood tests and things like that, there is no clear way of looking at this. You have to ask a lot of questions.
It's literally behavior-based.
You have to ask a lot of questions and do a lot of observations.
And you have to be honest, and you have to be honest to the person who's asking the questions.
Yeah, if you are not honest with your doctor, you are fucked.
And that starts with being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Which starts with knowing what to look for.
Yeah, and if you can't do that, then you might be in Section 2 here, schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. Anyway, first section is neurodevelopment disorders. And that's a group of conditions with the onset during, well, what? Oh, the developmental period. So up through when you're born, up through at least puberty. Yeah, so those neurodevelopmental disorders, they don't have anything to do with something that happened to you. They are just really who you are. So that's going to include some things like Down syndrome, for instance.
Down syndrome, autism.
So those are things that are pretty much beyond your control. You're just going to be assigned those whether you like it or not.
Asperger's syndrome.
Yeah. Now, as you were talking about Down, since Down syndromes came up, we're actually all slightly autistic, and in that spectrum, because it's a really wide-ranging spectrum, and a lot of people don't really understand that these people actually are kind of normal in some regards, and well, you're kind of not normal in other regards. So there's a growing movement, especially with Downs and autism, that to really look at it, everyone is autistic in some way.
Yeah,
really severe.
I saw there was a very interesting article I saw somewhere about how when you look at autistic behaviors of people who are severely autistic, the kind of people who can't really function in society, their obsessive and repetitive behaviors could have been evolutionary advantages back when we were back when fire was still a brand new invention and we were fighting with tigers over our kills.
Right.
The highly observant, the ones who have followed patterns and rituals were the ones who survived.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my theories about Down syndrome, actually, that Down syndrome, if it's not an evolutionary advantage, it's actually a vestigial thing from one of our ancestors. One of the things that they say about Down syndrome people is they tend to be very, bulky, very strong, physically muscular.
Yep.
Yeah, they have a more
people. Yeah. They got a stocky build, and they have muscles under that stocky build. It is
musculars.
Yeah.
Pretty good muscle tone. So, I mean, it may just have been. It may simply be a matter of, hey, that's something in our evolutionary past that we had people who were. They could beat the fuck out of you with a stick, or with their bare hands.
Yes.
And they could stand in front of that lion and say, "Bring it, bitch."
They could have.
I will rip your legs off, and I will beat you to death with them.
My mother worked with adult mentally disabled people, Down syndrome and autistics, and really, some of them are just. They're so wonderful to be around, really.
They are the happiest people in the world.
Many of them really are. The only thing is that they don't retain information well, so you're going to be teaching them how to button their shirts for the rest of their lives. It's a little depressing after a while.
Well,
but really, they're wonderful.
Over.
They're really nice people to be around, as long as you like children, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on to Section 2, schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders.
This runs in my family.
Oh boy. So defined by abnormalities in one or more of the following 5 domains: delusions, hallucinations, disorganized thinking in speech, grossly disorganized or abnormal motor behavior, including catatonia. I love that word. Catatonia.
Catatonia. It's a great word.
And negative symptoms. Now,
That's very vague.
Okay, so what's okay? So 2 prominent, particularly prominent negative symptoms, which would be diminished emotional expression and avolition. And avolition, which I also had to look up, is a decrease in motivated, self-initiated, purposeful activities.
And that could be a lot of people could show those symptoms, especially nowadays.
Now, also, it is very important to note that your particular abnormalities may have subsets of any and all of these. You know, you may not be restricted to schizophrenia or bipolar or depressive or anxiety or obsessive compulsive or trauma or any of these things. You may have a shopping list of different trigger items and things that are about you, and that doesn't make you bad in any way.
Yeah.
This is how your mental structure has manifested itself.
I think back to The Simpsons on that, when the character Mr. Burns, they tell him he's diagnosed with everything. And basically all diseases are trying to go through the same door and they get stuck. So it makes up who you are.
Wow. We're diagnosed with everything. That would suck.
So it's just a matter, I mean, everything put together, I mean, any symptoms you have, put together who you are, and if you can live with it, then you're doing good.
Yeah, we are definitely the sum of our parts.
The funny story here is my grandmother built the Hoover Dam. She built it.
By herself?
By herself. She built it. That's her dam. She did that.
Okay, all right.
Or she believed that she did that.
It's probably better just to get behind that and agree with her.
And when they brought her before a judge to try to get her some help, she was perfectly normal up to that point. And then she told the judge that she built the Hoover Dam. I built that.
Okay.
What do you mean you built that? I built it. That's my dam.
And pray tell, what did the judge say?
Oh.
Okay.
I mean, there was something I heard recently, as in like sometime this week, that they're realizing that it's probably a better thing with that type of disorder up through like Alzheimer's is to actually go along with what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's actually more beneficial for their mental state instead of trying to deny everything. Is just play along, because denying isn't going to fix anything. So
I was listening to This American Life, and that was one of the telling lies, basically, to comfort people.
Yeah.
And someone's mother was trying to figure out, you know, she was going through Alzheimer's and all that, and losing her mind, and both her and her husband were stand-up comedians. So basically, they couldn't figure it out what was going on until finally they realized this is improv. This is just improv at its most rudimentary. You take whatever they say, and all you do is say yes and. So basically, you agree with whatever they say, and you elaborate upon it.
Oh yeah, you remember that time the guy fell off the Hoover Dam?
Exactly.
It was crazy.
Exactly, and if you're very clever with it, you can slowly integrate actual facts into it. and kind of bring out that person. And you could go the other way and be so ludicrous about it that they correct you.
Yeah,
Because-
I'd probably be so ludicrous about it that I would get corrected.
Yeah, yeah. So it can go either way, and sometimes all in the same interaction. So there's a lot of different ways to deal with it. Again, your mileage may vary. Good luck.
No, that wasn't an alien ship that came down and landed on. It was just a helicopter.
But it was piloted by aliens.
Wow! Crazy!
I know.
Mind blown.
I know, and you were there, right?
I wasn't born yet, but yes, I was.
You were there, and he was there.
That was during the building of the dam.
Don't you
I was foretold.
there. Exactly.
They came to see the dam.
Yeah, that was actually something that happened because the husband was so good at it. The mother ended up liking her son-in-law more than her own daughter. And so much to the point that when the daughter was suddenly being removed from her memories, because that's kind of what happens, and the husband, the son-in-law, was being inserted into them.
Oh, wow.
Oh no!
Wow.
Yeah, it was something very hard for her to cope with and deal with. And if you start to contradict what's going on, you lose the battle immediately, because then you're mean. You're being mean. You're being hateful somehow, and you lose. That's just all there is to it. It sucks. So I'm very sorry for anybody that's going.
Well, there's very little that's awesome about Alzheimer's.
I think the best thing is that eventually it'll go away.
You mean they die?
Yeah.
Eventually it'll go away.
Eventually you won't have to deal with it anymore. But until then,
Oof.
good luck.
Well, when you get to a certain point, you get to meet new people every day.
Yeah.
That's
Who
true.
are you?
No.
I'm your husband.
That is true.
We're an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
I know it's late in your life, but
Remember the one lady was like, she forgot that she was in a nursing home, and she was like, "Wow, is this a fancy resort that I'm in? This must be costing you a fortune." And she was like really happy about where she was, and how can you afford? How can you
This is
afford
part of my
the
frequent
spa?
flyer miles.
No, it's all expenses paid.
All expenses
We
paid.
spared no expense for you. Spared no expense. Yeah.
I just turned in a few of my, hotel points.
Oh, just travel vouchers. It's fine. It's no big deal.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Cool.
American
No worries.
Express Black. That's all it is. We got this covered.
Orange is the new black.
So, on to bipolar and related disorders. Section 3. Bipolar disorder, bipolar 1 disorder, bipolar 2 disorder, cyclothymic disorder, thank you, substance medication-induced bipolar and related disorder, bipolar and related disorder due to another medical condition, other specified bipolar and related disorder, and unspecified bipolar and related disorder. So that's going to be a chapter to dig into by somebody else.
We call this chapter mood swing.
That's a rough one.
There's a lot to that. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead
We
and look.
didn't say what moods,
Yeah,
just that they swing.
yeah, that is basically the mood swing kind of category.
I mean,
And
in college,
there's a lot of things that can cause mood swings. A lot of things.
I mean, in college, I had a roommate who was bipolar, and she would go from up and active and happy and cleaning the entire apartment to completely the opposite, completely immobile, depressed, everything just shut down within a course of minutes, or maybe 30 minutes or something. I mean, and it's seeing actual bipolar is hard. I mean, because it goes.
Now, was that
instant.
bipolar, or was that manic depressive?
No, she was diagnosed bipolar.
Okay. So, again, what we have here is we don't necessarily know what we're looking at because we're not professionals.
Well,
So,
bipolar, I think, is characterized by they spend so little time in between the two states that the in between doesn't really matter. They're super happy, or they're super opposite.
Yeah, that's how I understood it. Is that the swings are more extreme and more frequent.
Yeah, and that's why I witnessed that.
They spend more time in two states than they do in all the rest of them. They don't have like a normal or what we characterize as the in between the spectrums. They don't have any reasonable amount of time.
There's no middle of the road.
Black and white.
Like they wave at those parts of the spectrum as they're going by, and that's about it.
They don't have the Goldilocks zone.
What was that?
Putting it in a planetary term, they don't live in the Goldilocks zone. They live next to the sun or out by the new non-planet Pluto.
They are a Kuiper Belt object.
Hey, if Pluto got too close to the sun, it would develop a tail, and that's no way for a planet to behave.
What self-respecting planet would do that?
I almost spit all over the mic. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
So depressive disorders.
The bipolar thing is also, there's, like you're saying, they refer to it as mania. It's when you have that extreme excitability and
when
wanting to
high.
take like excessive risks and spend like a bunch of money and
Well, a clarification on this point. It's not that it is risk-seeking behavior. Risk-seeking behavior doesn't apply to someone in a manic state because they don't believe they can lose. There are things, mental disorders and all sorts of other psychological constructs of people who are relatively normal who are risk takers because they are seeking that they get something out of that.
Now, what you're talking about?
Someone who is manic depressive, they don't think they can lose. It's not a risk to them.
Yeah,
They're doing it because they are assured that they will succeed.
They are on such an extreme high that there is no chance of failure, and then they are in such an extreme low that there's no chance of success.
Yeah, when they are in those states, the concept of the opposite state doesn't even exist to them.
And they spend most of their time in one of those two, and there's no in between. There's no, well, I might win, but I might lose.
No.
That does not happen. Like that
I'm on
period
top
of
of the
time
world.
is gone in 10 minutes of their life.
And so I'm on top of the world high roller, and now the casino is built on top of my face.
Yeah.
That's an odd place for the casino to be built, but it could happen.
Mentality, that's where it is.
I lost a big bet to a mob boss, and he made me part of the foundation.
Exactly, cement shoes, complete cement shoes. Now, what you might have been thinking there was more of an impulse control problem.
Yeah.
And that would be section 15.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So, chapter 4, depressive disorders. This apparently has now been separated from the bipolar and related disorders in this version. So, I tried to take note of that because they made some big changes trying to separate things out, the way they called things.
I think it should be.
To continue to change the industry and make it better.
Because it's not really bipolar; it's just down.
Yeah. When you look at the things on the bipolar spectrum, they swing to extremes, but they
still swing up.
When you look at any sine wave, it's the wave centers around something. And in the case of bipolars, it centers around what we would refer to as a normal mental state.
They just pass through it really quickly rather than spending most of their time there.
With depressives, we don't exist in the normal mental state area. That is
they
not
don't get
center.
up that high.
Yeah, that is not our center.
They just keep going. They go up. They almost reach normal, and then they go back down.
Occasionally you can get over the hill into true happy territory, but it doesn't happen very often.
No, those are the special times.
Yeah.
So
Those people suffer.
Yeah. Well, I think honestly, all of these people are suffering.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you're not going to be in a position where you're going to be diagnosed out of this book and not be suffering.
Yeah.
This is the book of how to analyze suffering.
Suffer a bit more than the others, though.
Oh yeah, well, there's certainly a range of suffering.
Sure.
You know, do you need a Band-Aid, or I'm sorry, you're not clotting properly.
Yeah. You're just going to have to keep bleeding forever.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, depressive disorders. We've got disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. That's a great one. Major depressive disorder, including major depressive episodes. Persistent depressive disorder.
Dysthymia.
Dysthymia. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Yeah.
Substance medication-induced depressive disorder. Depressive disorder due to another medical condition, and other specified depressive disorder and unspecified depressive disorders.
Yep.
So, again, yes, we have a lot of categories, but even those sometimes aren't enough.
One thing I want to mention about one of those, you talk about due to another medical condition.
Yeah.
That's one thing I experienced when I had my back problems. I had a couple of herniated discs. I was in pain, serious pain, for 3 years.
Ooh.
And after a while, you just really don't care anymore. Nothing is good. You're angry, you're upset. I mean, you're basically depressed and on the low side after a while for a considerable amount of time. And I've come out and not been in pain for quite a number of years now. So, but yeah, that is a real.
Well, talking about that too is sometimes you do have to get blood work because they can't find out that you could have a problem with your thyroid or something that one of your organs not functioning that would set that off, because in the case of my grandma, she had the thyroid condition or whatever that kept getting worse and worse and worse, and that
and there's
messes up your body.
I've got a funny story about the pain. I mean, pain affects different people in different ways. Obviously, constant pain changes people. Literally.
My ex used to work at a pain management clinic, taking calls from people that had sold their, heavy narcotics that they were getting for other drug money or whatever, and then they realized they didn't have it anymore, and then they needed it really, really badly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, not so good, because of course they're completely addicted to the barbiturates.
Oh yeah. And
they're
some
all
of the pain medications are in fact habit forming, and then some of them, even though they're habit forming, they still need it.
Yeah.
Because they really are in that much pain, and just being in that much pain changes how you react to things. And I remember interesting little anecdotal story. 8th grade science teacher had I forget what happened, but he had knee surgery, like emergency knee surgery. Forget what for.
That sounds unfortunate.
They put him on some pain meds.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one day he came into the classroom, and he was late to class. Within 10 seconds of getting there, he had out stacks of dean referral forms and was yelling at us, "You guys need to be quiet!" Blah! And just going off. And we're I'm sitting 2/3 of the way to the back. I'm looking at the people in the front of the class who are looking backwards, trying to hide their laughter, because they're we had no idea where this guy was coming from. Holy shit, what happened here?
Yeah.
And
he went off for about 5 minutes, and then he went on with class. But it was whoa.
Yeah, see, that's why I lived in pain, because I was prescribed medication. I tried taking it, and yeah, it helped the pain a little bit, but you couldn't function.
Mm.
So I ended up living with the pain. I found other ways to try to manage it, and after a while, I figured out the right way for me.
Right.
Which for
Well,
back problems was hanging
it
upside down.
depends a great deal on person and personality.
Yes.
Because some people, they can exist in pain, and they just tough through it, and it is what it is, and they're all right. And some people, they're in pain, and they're going to take it out on everybody they can find. And if you're the closest person, back the fuck up.
Yeah.
And it can vary from day to day and episode to episode. I mean, I get my chronic migraines. I'm in pain probably the majority of days, but it's not enough to stop me. Now that I'm on medication, of course, it used to be horrible. I'm fortunate that I don't have to take anything stronger than what I'm taking, because if I took something that was habit forming, I would probably be Gregory House.
There you go.
Right?
You know.
Well, I mean, I get sinus pressure headaches when I know when a storm's coming, because I feel fucking awful.
Yeah,
But
I can feel it.
When
Today,
barometric pressure goes through the floor.
Nothing touches it. Nothing even slows it down. The only thing I can do is close my eyes and take a nap.
Yeah.
That is it. And most days, that's not really an option. So I just kind of deal. And it is what it is. Yeah, my head hurts. Keep talking. Tell me what you need to tell me.
Man, you may need to move to a state that doesn't have fluctuating weather like Florida. I mean, really. Just really.
Weather in Florida.
Or
my tolerance for pain is quite high.
Or have you tried the decongestants, the actual over the pharmacy? You have to go to the pharmacist to
Or
grab.
they scan your license because you might make crystal meth in your bathtub
Oh.
with it.
Sudafed.
I'd like the generic Sudafed.
I only.
Thanks.
It is Sudafed. It's pseudoephedrine, and I save that stuff for when I'm actually sick, because my last job I really didn't have sick days because I was traveling. So I'm like out somewhere. My last trips were basically to Canada. So and yeah, I actually did. I had a major sinus infection, bronchitis.
Oh.
Thanks for saluting. And I waited 8 days, and I was like, okay, this hasn't run the normal course of a cold. I need some antibiotics.
There's some weird colored stuff coming out of my nose. I think I really need to work on this.
Yeah. And it was like, I went to basically urgent care on Sunday night and flew out Monday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, Monday was a bad day.
No, just being on a plane with the sinus. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I've done that. I've been there. When your nose is totally congested and your ears will not equalize, I have lived that. That's not
making
fun.
my head hurt. Oh.
Not fun at all.
The
thing that I noticed worked best on liftoff was sucking in as hard as I could through my nose, because that was the only way I could get my ears to pop. Weird.
Okay. We need to move on.
Talk about flying. We can talk about anxiety.
Who wants anxiety?
Let's go on. Move on.
Go ahead, David. Take 5 through 8.
5 through 8? Okay. Anxiety disorders. Okay. Disorders that share features of excessive fear and anxiety and related behavioral disturbances. I've been having vodka. Fear is the emotional response to real or perceived imminent threat, whereas anxiety is anticipation of future threat.
Yeah. That's a common one. A lot of people have. I mean, I've known many people throughout my time who have had some form of that and have panic attacks, and I mean, that's
It's
Yep.
definitely one of those. It's very common, and I had to cut down this section because it was so long.
Yeah.
And really, it's very situational, because some
Yes.
people aren't afraid of anything until you get them in the right particular situation, and then nothing can go right.
We have a phrase for that in my game night crew. Andy, actually, you might have heard this. Analysis paralysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are stuck so much in analyzing the current situation and the future outcomes thereof that you cannot make a decision.
Analysis paralysis is very
It's a real
big.
thing.
It's a very big part of this condition, because you get to the point where you have considered every option so much, out of fear that you will miss something, that every calculation you can conceive comes up with bad.
You keep
Every outcome is
running
bad.
through them all because you can't decide which one you dislike the least.
Yes, and the biggest bitch of having generalized anxiety disorder is mine. The biggest bitch about having this condition is it's all logical.
It's very logical. Yeah.
Every consideration, every calculation, it all makes sense. There is no situation in which I can step back and say, okay, this is. I do this with my depression. I do this to cope with my depression. I will step back from my emotions and let my logical mind keep me alive and say, okay, looking at the situation purely logically, there is no this does not pan out. This does not add up. So I can discard that as illogical, irrational, and keep moving until it goes away. Problem with an anxiety disorder is every fear is logical. This isn't a phobia in which it is an excessive irrational fear. This all makes sense.
Yeah, but also
That's why it sucks.
You're unable to eliminate options.
Yeah, you also can't. The negative always seems to outweigh the positive.
Always.
As well. So
every time.
Yeah, and even something that might have a completely reasonable positive outcome has been turned and twisted into a dystopian future.
Yeah.
And that's why I think
something Orwellian has happened in your thought process.
Go on, Ann.
And that's why I think it will push you into the depression, because you've sat there and you've analyzed everything, and it's exhausting.
Well, in the case of anxiety disorders, they do have to they have to. At least this is how my psychiatrist did it. He identified the depression first, because while the signs for the anxiety disorder were there, and anxiety disorders do often come with depression, having an anxiety disorder does not necessarily mean you have a depressive disorder. You're likely to be depressed in your daily life because your anxiety disorder is putting you through a living hell. But chemically, there may be no imbalance, and that's tricky to divorce the two when you get the anxiety disorder first. It's harder to make a dispositive diagnosis on the other. So he diagnosed the depression first, and then went for the anxiety disorder. He had two sets of notes, and when he would ask questions, and he would take notes on both pads, and then when he went to ask questions, he would toss one of them to the side until he locked down the major depressive disorder, and then he moved on, and then we moved on to the other one. At least that's how he did it for me.
That's a pretty good approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good approach. So, of course, with an anxiety disorder, boy, can that fall right in Chapter 6 real easily, too.
Yeah. OCD, obsessive, compulsive, and related disorders. Includes compulsive obsessive compulsive disorder. Holy shit. Body dysmorphic disorder. I'll have to look that one up later. Hoarding disorder. I'm familiar with this one a little bit. Trichotillomania, hair pulling disorder. Excoriation, skin picking disorder. substance medication-induced obsessive compulsive and related disorder, obsessive compulsive and related disorder due to another medical condition, and other specified obsessive compulsive and related disorder and unspecified obsessive compulsive and related disorder, e.g., body-focused repetitive behavior disorder, obsessional jealousy.
Yeah, I've seen some. Obviously, in the current DSM, it's split up, but I've seen a lot of discussion on linking obsessive compulsive disorders and those kinds of disorders to anxiety disorders, because the two are, they haven't quite got it locked down yet, but the two seem to be very closely related. You can have one without the other.
Yeah.
But a lot of people,
almost a logical progression.
Yeah, but a lot of people who have one have another. I don't have. I have. What is the term for it? There's a term for someone who has behaviors that you often see in the condition, but they're not extreme enough to warrant diagnosis of that condition. I have obsessive paranoid.
Locks 8 times before you leave the house.
I check
off.
Every time I go to bed, I check to make sure the door is locked like 3 or 4 times. My compulsions are not extreme enough to seriously inhibit my daily life, and that's part of what the criteria for this is. It has to seriously inhibit your daily life. But I have an anxiety disorder, and I've developed these compulsive behaviors that go alongside with it. So it's this may be
like a behavioral tick.
Yeah, this may be being linked together in a future edition of the DSM, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Body dysmorphic disorder. I know that somebody's looking it up right now, but as I understand it, that's basically, always being obsessed about your own appearance.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I have it pulled up right now, and they're saying most of us have something we don't like about our appearance: a crooked nose, an uneven smile. Your eyes are too large or too small. And though we may fret about our imperfections, they don't interfere in our daily lives. But people who have body dysmorphic disorder think about their real or perceived flaws for hours each day. They can't control the negative thoughts and don't believe people who tell them that they look fine. I mean,
those are the people who are obsessed with plastic surgery.
Yeah, that is a common behavior among sufferers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who was obsessive compulsive a little bit, kind of on the mild side, and one of our mutual friends got him down to locking his door 3 times a day when he went out, and he described it as, it's a series of behaviors that you have to do. You have to go through these things each day, and if you do not, you don't feel right at all until you have done so.
Yeah, it's like some magic checklist that you have to go through.
Yeah.
It causes anxiety for the rest of your existence until you have completed the checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And heaven forbid the person that's trying to be nice and do it for them.
No. You don't understand. You have to verify it personally.
Yeah, thank you.
I had here's a little funny story. I had an instructor in college who talked about the one time that he almost broke professional code. Maybe he did so. He had a gentleman and his mother who came in, and he discovered through a series of interviews that he was abusing his mother, and she was retaliating by not being hygienic and not showering, etc. And that was why he brought her in, was she's not showering, she smells to high heaven. I don't know what's going on, and etc. Not to go into too much detail, but he was like...
No, we don't need more detail on that. That's okay.
He's like, as I shook his hand to go, I grabbed his wrist, and I ran my hand all the way up his arm and back down. And then I stood in the doorway so he could not go back in and go to the bathroom and wash his hands. And the look on his face was absolutely priceless. But the news reports of the police standoffs afterwards were not.
Oh!
wow.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So that would be the unclean. I have to wash.
Yes.
Come in contact, germaphobe kind of thing.
So he came into contact with germaphobe. He ran his hand all the way up the guy's arm and
That's
then
just
down.
rough.
That's
Even if you're
method
not
to figure that
OCD, that's just an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
Like I would feel the need to wash if some guy did that. Like,
Yeah,
what did you do?
probably need to wash just being
This
in.
is not how you shake my hand.
Like, whatever just happened here makes me feel unclean. I don't know what it is.
I feel dirty.
Whatever you just did to him over there, way over there, makes me feel dirty over here.
Yeah. So I think we're up to trauma and stressor-related disorders.
Ooh.
Include reactive attachment disorder, disinhibited social engagement disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, acute stress disorder, and adjustment disorder.
Now this is of course a big hot button. PTSD.
We know PTSD. We have made many veterans who have seen IEDs.
Yes. Now, it doesn't have to be explosions that cause something that is related to PTSD. It can
Sometimes you never know.
It can simply be exposed to a traumatic event of some type. Something that does not compute with your own brain and the way that you're used to the world being, just messes you up. And everything after that reminds you of that in some way.
Yeah. I had a coworker with PTSD. And the way that I found out was she was in the doorway to the area where I was working. So I stood back. I was 3 or 4 feet away from her, and I was waiting for her to get out of the doorway. She finished her conversation or talking to whoever she was talking to or just saying whatever she needed to say. She turned around, she saw me standing there, and she screamed.
Awkward.
Like, holy shit, scream. Like, I was like, oh my god, I'm not doing anything.
Now you just feel horrible. What did I do?
What have I done wrong? I will not do that again.
That's very awkward.
After the scream, she was like, I have PTSD. You can't do that. I'm like, I will stand like 8 feet away.
Can you tell me?
Not a problem.
I'll never do it again.
Oh wow.
Not a problem.
Now the thing
Holy
about
shit.
that leads into a good segue because it has been subjugated by the military. Of course, that PTSD is a big thing. That's not, of course, to diminish its value at all. That is a very, very serious problem that almost every service member, to a degree, is dealing with. But it's not just service members that deal with PTSD.
It can be anyone. It's just very common among service members because they are constantly in contact with high-stress environments.
Yeah. Let's see, rape victims.
Mm-hmm.
How about nearly everyone in Ferguson, Missouri right now?
Yeah.
Anyone who's witnessed a murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Car crashes.
Victims of assault and battery.
People that have been in car crashes.
Yeah, or have witnessed something even from outside, crash or some severe accident of some sort.
Yeah. Maybe
there are many things that can trigger this.
Twitter, maybe some of the people out on Twitter that have been have seen that beheading of the journalist.
I did not watch that on purpose because I like sleep.
Yeah. Yes. Well, in some people's feeds, it auto-played.
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
In some people's Twitter feeds, that auto-played.
Yeah, that's not cool, folks.
That's not cool. That's not cool. Bad code, people. Don't autoplay anything. Ever. This is just a word to the coders out there.
Autoplays are for jerks.
Yes, autoplays are very bad. Very, very bad, especially around Halloween. Somebody's trying to freak you out. Just don't do it, okay?
All we need is more clowns.
Right.
If ISIS dressed like clowns and clown makeup with big red noses, we'd have already nuked them.
It would be more terrifying.
We would have already nuked them.
Well, that's true.
The whole country of Iraq.
That's
get
true.
our people out, nuke it to glass. We're good.
So, now, there is a pattern to the DSM, and many of these things are like the logical conclusion. The next chapter seems to be the logical conclusion of the last. Chapter 8 there. That'll be your cue to read it.
Chapter 8. Okay. Dissociative disorder. Characterized by a disruption of and or discontinuity in the normal integration of consciousness, memory, identity, emotion, perception, body representation, motor control, and behavior. Mine's caused by vodka. Theirs is all the time.
Yeah. So many people that have gone through these stressor-related disorders are then often forced into a dissociative disorder as well, where everything that was around that stressor will affect them in a very negative way. And they could completely blank out and not remember it at all.
It's a body's self-defense mechanism.
Yeah,
basically.
it's the,
Memories that are so horrible they cannot face them, even as just memories.
They blank them out.
Yep, it's like, nope, that's a toxic thing. We're going to get rid of that for you. Thank you very much.
Nope.
That's where you get people with things like psychogenic retrograde amnesia. They just forget it. Here's the event. That event and all these things preceding it, gone. What?
We'll just, yeah.
What are you talking about that happened?
Yeah.
That never happened.
No.
The event?
I would
What
have
event?
had
I don't remember
sex to be
event.
pregnant.
His mind brain is permanently rejecting his real identity.
I reject your reality and substitute my own is a literal fact in this situation.
And it's not pretty.
No. Well, again, there's a spectrum here. Some of them not very harmful to other people. And if it's just one of those things where you don't remember that horrible car crash that ended you up in a coma for 4 years, it's probably okay.
That's probably going to leave that alone.
It's probably okay. We're not going to force you to relive that because that would be
You
bad.
didn't see 8 people explode due to a mortar shot.
No, that's
That didn't happen. Your mind blanked it out
You don't need to see that.
because it was too horrible to even register.
Now, there are situations in this case where they have to do these various forms of confrontation therapy because the event has been blanked out, but there's still behavioral anomalies and going on, and you won't be able to fix them until you bring that memory back and deal with it.
Some linchpin kind of memory.
Yeah.
You have to go
event
back to the root.
The event happened still. I mean, it didn't not happen, so it is there somewhere. It's just not being recognized by the brain in a normal fashion.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes the brain a while to repair itself to be able to go through these things in a way that is not damaging anymore.
Yeah.
So, and that does happen sometimes just with time on its own. But usually a little guidance is always acceptable.
Just a little nudge in the right direction.
Yeah.
A little help, please.
No, you really have to face this and accept that it actually happened.
Yeah, goodbye with a little help from my friends. So who wants to take 9 through 12?
You have to move your arms in weird ways when you say that.
Goodbye with a little
Help from my friend.
Oh, speaking of comedians who died too young because of disorders, John Belushi
God, there's such a list.
did a really good impersonation of Jimmy Cocker or
Yes, Joe Cocker.
Joe Cocker. Sorry,
yeah,
Joe Cocker.
he did, man.
Yeah,
Such
And
a
in fact, they actually brought Joe Cocker and Jim Belushi
John
on together to do a duet.
Yeah. My mom actually saw Joe Cocker live, and then she saw the John Belushi thing, and she was like, "Yeah, that's really close."
sometimes.
It's pretty funny.
Hey Don, you want to take 9 through 10?
Yeah, sure.
12. Sure.
9 through 12?
I'll do 9 through 10 if you really want, but I mean,
It's kind of short now.
That is very short.
yes.
I'm drunk off vodka, and I did.
I know. Yeah. Somatic, symptom, and related disorders. Okay, this one's new to me.
Somatic?
Somatic symptom disorder, illness, anxiety disorder, conversion disorder, which is functional neurological symptom disorder, psychological factors affecting other medical conditions, factitious disorder, and other specified somatic symptom and related disorder, and unspecified somatic symptom and related disorder.
Yeah, we'll call that the other category, of course, because you have to have those.
Yes.
And other.
Yeah.
What is a somatic symptom?
A somatoform disorder is when you have a subject has symptoms characteristic of some form of physical illness, but testing and observation reveals no indication of that illness. It's literally a case of the mind making it real. Yeah.
Like
The reason conversion disorder is in here is because you'll find people who have, they're under some kind of psychological stress who will then start exhibiting physical symptoms because to compensate for the stress they're under, their brain is making them ill.
Yeah, somatic itself, the term means of the body, relating to the body, distinct from the mind, soul, spirit, etc. In medicine, the somatic illness is bodily, not mental illness. So specifically, these are the relation between the mentality and the physical body. Yeah, and sometimes the disassociation thereof.
Kind of like throwing up because you don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
Thinking about going into work makes you want to throw
causing
up.
physical symptoms.
Yep.
Well, they're not necessarily stress, but other mental interpretation of reality causing physical symptoms to occur.
Illness, anxiety disorder would be the kind of the hypochondriac disorder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's probably the best way that most people, layman's terms, would understand it.
You've got some form of mental problem, and as the coping mechanism, and it's not a good one, you are
physically ill.
You are physically ill for no good reason. There's nothing wrong with you.
Because your mind is making your body feel ill because it thinks that it should be.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that works. I have actually thought myself sick before, and it is perfectly possible to do. You just, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's amazing how the chemical factory in your brain responds to all sorts of mental states, and just, yep, you're gonna get sick. Lowered immune system, done. You'll find a way to make yourself sick if you really want to.
You hear the factory alarms off in your head saying, "We're shutting down."
Klaxon's going off everywhere. Dive, dive, dive. Ooga.
Buckaroo eject.
Yeah, exactly. So of course we said no, never mind. I was thinking something else. My brain is starting to shut down already.
John, number 10.
Yeah, I was going to move on to number 10, and we were talking about making yourself throw up. Feeding and eating disorders. There's pica, is that right? Pica or pica?
Pica.
Rumination disorder.
Yeah, I say pica.
Isn't that eating soil?
You compulsively eat things that are not food.
Yeah, there's things where people eat glass and things like that.
Sand.
Paper.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep my vodka-induced ideas to myself.
There's rumination disorder. It's too late in the night. Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And that's, I guess, where you don't eat stuff or you're eating very limited. And then there's obviously anorexia and bulimia, which hopefully people know about and are aware of. Binge and purge and all that nice, or don't eat at all. And the binge eating disorder, which is just eating a lot all the time.
That's binge and purge. I thought that was eating
a
lot and throwing up.
No,
No, bulimia is binge and purge.
Binge is just you eat.
Binge, you just eat. Like
you just eat. You do not purge.
No purging.
Yeah.
No
If you
purging
have,
involved.
I've done that.
if you have the binge eating disorder, you probably should be a competitive food eater.
Yeah.
Possibly. Now, rumination syndrome.
Yep.
Yes.
That's an interesting one because apparently it's just where you throw up. There's no retching, nausea, heartburn, abdominal pain. You just throw everything up.
And it's not
Goes down
that you're intending to. You just literally cannot hold food down.
Is according
It's
to
not as like bulimia is binge and purge. This is like you're eating normally, but you can't hold it down.
just all of a sudden it goes up.
You're not trying to throw it up, but your body is like rejecting it for you.
And there's no other medical reason.
No other medical reason.
Yeah,
It is
motility disorder characterized by effortless regurgitation of most meals following consumption due to the involuntary contraction of the muscles around the abdomen. Just
you eat something, you cramp, you puke.
it's weird. That's a weird one.
You are not binging and then purging.
It's been historically
You're
documented.
not sticking a finger down your throat. It is literally
It just happens.
Yeah,
just happens.
yeah.
You're
It's
like
historically documented as affecting only infants, young children, and people with cognitive disabilities. The
but-
prevalence is as high as 10% in institutionalized patients with various mental disabilities. Today it's being diagnosed in increasing numbers of otherwise healthy adolescents and adults, though there is a lack of awareness of the condition by doctors, patients, and general public because it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
There is something that I had when I was a kid. I can't remember the name of it right at the moment. Pyloric stenosis, which kind of sounds like this, but I was a very young child. Probably pre-1 years old, and I was stopped, or I didn't digest food, and it came up. And they found out that my lower stomach valve did not operate properly or was stuck shut.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, and I had surgery when I was a kid, and the doctors, my mom had me take me to one doctor or whatever, and they said, oh, it's just something, and they may have been like something like this, so it's just common. And she was like, no, it's not common. She took me to another doctor who found out that it was this other thing, and got me into surgery immediately because I wasn't keeping down food.
Second opinions are good. Second opinions are very good.
second opinions are good.
So that's one thing that is. Some of these are like other actual diseases, and that's where we said that this is one's not caused by this physical disorder. And if you have something like this, probably always check for physical disorder first,
Yeah.
just in case, and then move on to the mental disorder. Because if you have a physical disorder and you're not keeping food down, that you could die.
Yeah.
These are all life-threatening kind of things.
Yes.
When you're changing your caloric intake, you have. That's the fuel. That's the fuel. If you start messing with the fuel tank, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yep.
Gonna have a bad time.
Yeah.
When I was the funny story from my infancy was from birth, they wanted to feed the kids every 4 hours. I wanted to eat every 2.
Nom nom nom.
Super high metabolism. Super high metabolism, which lasted until I turned about 30. Out of high school, I could eat 3 dinners in a row.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
No problem. I did. I ate three. Not just dinners. I ate 3 Thanksgiving dinners in a row.
I resemble that remark.
I can totally.
From 2 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. I ate.
Yeah, I
pretty much.
Well,
you ever been to my house?
I've done that too.
Yeah. I'm pretty much always hungry.
Yeah.
That's.
And then I turned 30. And instead of just eating all of that and staying skinny, I started eating all that and gaining weight.
Yeah,
Womp womp.
that's a problem.
Well,
Yeah.
well, that brings us to our next disorder.
It certainly does.
Elimination disorders involves the inappropriate elimination of urine or feces and are usually first diagnosed in childhood or adolescence. Yeah. I mean, if you're starting to throw feces or just peeing on people or things, I mean, that could be a problem.
No,
I mean,
I didn't do that.
Would it be
I never
if
pooed on
you
anybody
were
intentionally.
like a bedwetter? Like if you were a kid and you were a bedwetter, would that be considered?
It could, yeah. As long as you've removed other environmental stimulus, like stop giving the kid the glass of water right before they go to bed.
Yeah.
No, the most horrifying memory from my childhood is when I threw up.
Oh, that's horrible. all that delicious food you just wasted.
Yeah, it was corn too. Apparently,
it's always corn.
It's always corn.
It's always
corn.
Corn.
I haven't eaten corn in years, but yeah, I see
A
corn.
friend of mine muses that there is an auxiliary corn stomach somewhere, like a little fold of your intestine.
It just holds.
It holds that.
It doesn't hold just corn in a digested form. It's whole.
Yeah,
whole
it's
kernels.
or the undigested kernels.
You
yes.
can recognize it after it's out.
It's like, when did I
You
have?
go,
When did
son
I
of a
even
bitch.
eat that?
That was
Well,
my
yeah.
corn.
You actually realize then that the husk around corn is not digestible.
It's not, especially in modern corn. Yeah.
No, this was dehusked, but I could still recognize the kernels.
Yeah, it was in your dookie.
No, it was just in my throw up.
Oh,
Because it was like, why am I awake right now? Bah! That's why I'm awake right now. Okay, let's go to the bathroom.
Oh wow, that's great.
Okay. Speaking of waking up,
Yes.
okay, sleep-wake disorders.
You're
Okay,
good
the
at
next
the
one.
transition.
That's number 12. Yeah, I'm finding it. I'm getting there. Intended for use by general mental health and medical clinicians, those caring for adult, geriatric, and pediatric patients. Sleep-wake disorders encompass 10 disorders, all disorder groups,
Disorders or disorder groups. Yeah.
or disorder groups. Insomnia disorder, hypersomnia.
somnolescence.
Somnolescence disorder, narcolepsy,
No essence.
breathing-related sleep disorders, circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorders, non-rapid eye movement sleep arousal disorders, nightmare disorders, rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder, restless leg syndrome, and substance medication-induced sleep disorder. So, yeah,
That's a lot of mouthfuls.
that it is, and
That's what she said.
You ever have that restless leg syndrome thing? You ever have
Well-
that when your legs just you're freaking dead tired, but your legs like they want to move and they won't?
I do it in my sleep.
It's usually yeah.
I'm doing it right now. I can't not be in motion, else I feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a leg thumper
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I like bouncing, but usually this is like you're laying down and what I find is my legs just I can't get them in a comfortable position
yes.
ever.
I just twitch my feet back and forth.
It's like they feel like they want to go jogging, and then the rest of you is like dead tired, and you just wish it would detach and go outside and run so you can go to sleep.
Wouldn't that be great?
I've
If
never
you,
gotten
if
to
you
that.
see a disembodied set of legs running outside, that's just mine. Don't worry about
We'll
that.
know. Yeah, this is another one of those spectrum disorders. It is theorized that the majority of people actually have a little bit of this. Everyone gets a little restless and bounces around a little bit every once in a while.
Yep.
It has to be nearly constant in a person's life for it to really be characterized as a disorder.
Yeah, I find that with a lot of these disorders, it's only a problem when it starts affecting other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, okay, my leg's bouncing. I don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to this.
Apparently, the bench that I'm sitting on is irritating everyone else in the row.
Yes.
Yep. Been there, done that.
I've experienced that. Are you thumping your leg again? In the back of the vehicle.
Yeah. Like, why is the whole
Stop that shit.
you get that rhythm
Or
where you start to get
I
the
went to-
sine wave going, and you
Yeah.
really start bouncing it, and it's like, I didn't know I was doing that. I'm sorry.
yeah. No, like I
But in the
went to
vacuum,
high school with this chick, and then I missed junior high with her, and she showed up at my high school one day, and I'm sitting there thumping my legs. She's like, "You still do that shit with your legs?" Yeah. Sorry. This is my day.
Wow.
All day, every day.
Hey, Ann, do you want to get the next four?
The sexual dysfunctions.
Yeah. Taylor made for you. Go ahead.
Why?
There you go.
Why would?
Because
Okay.
because of the things that you say. That's why.
Hit it and quit it, Ann. Hit it and quit it.
Because of
I'm
the things you
just
say.
I'm just saying what you. I'm just verbally saying what everybody else thinks.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're saying what you think.
all
Don't
the
put
time.
your words in my
No,
mouth.
go ahead. Don't put anything else in his mouth either. No,
Chapter 13. Go ahead.
Typically characterized by a clinically significant disturbance in a person's ability to respond sexually or to experience sexual pleasure. Include delayed ejaculation, erectile disorder, female orgasmic disorder, female sexual interest / arousal disorder. What is this? Genito-pelvic pain penetration disorder? Oh.
Genitopelvic pain penetration disorder. Yeah.
That's a thing.
Male hypoactive sexual desire disorder. How come
Tiger
it just
Woods
says?
syndrome.
How come it says male? Wouldn't chicks be?
Yeah, but there's
Oh,
a
whatever.
different
There's
diagnosis.
probably a different name for the chick version.
Streetwalker?
No, that would probably be the female sexual interest arousal disorder.
It's
I don't know why.
Because we're wired
the
differently.
orange
That's
blossom
why.
trail disorder.
Well,
It's basically nymphomania,
yeah.
I guess.
But the male hypo, they're all ranges.
How very sexist of them not to
Most-
include a female hypoactive sexual desire disorder.
Yeah.
Moving on.
It's the female orgasmic disorder, female sexual interest arousal disorder.
It's probably in there.
That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen to guys, like male
Yes.
sexual.
We're wired
Well,
differently, so
But
you have to
women
diagnose
are
them differently.
internal, and men are external. So they have different names for the parts.
The innie and the outie, yes. So
Premature early ejaculation. I mean, I'm moving on. That's what I'm.
Carry
that's
on,
why I'm
yes.
saying that. Substance medication-induced sexual dysfunction. Really?
Viagra abuse, yeah.
Don't get high on
If you have an erection lasting more than 4 hours, you should go to the ER. Would you really do that?
No.
Like, what do? You wait in the car and have somebody go in. He's got a hard on for like 5 hours
Hey, that's-
now.
That's no
Get
joke.
into a
That's
6
when you
hour.
start rotting and fall off.
That's where I draw the
what
line.
heard,
6
man.
hours.
I know some people that see that only as a challenge.
Yeah, they're like,
That is not a good idea.
Nope.
No.
holy shit, man! Don't they have to? They have to do a shot into it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't they bleed it?
It depends.
Bleed it.
Mhm.
It's full of blood.
Yeah, because the penis is basically a collection of blood.
It's a sponge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Holy
Yeah.
shit!
Anyway,
So they're reducing pressure the only way they can.
so if you're having an issue where the blood is no longer circulating through
get
all
some-
those capillaries and vestulars and all that, then yeah, you got to get rid of the blood that's in there
With leeches?
sometimes.
Okay, other specified sexual dysfunction and unspecified sexual dysfunction.
Then that can lead right into the next one.
Unspecified sexual dysfunction.
No man wants to talk about this subject.
Sexual dysfunction?
Any of the above. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could have sexual dysfunction if you didn't like the person you were with, you know?
Well, there's
That's not a dysfunction though.
That's not a personal mentality problem.
Well, they could.
if you like the person that you're with and you cannot get it up, or you cannot keep it
That's where
up,
it's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
But then the male hypoactive sexual desire disorder.
You don't even
That's
care if you
hypo.
like
That's
them.
not hyper. I'm thinking hyper.
You don't even care
Hypo
if
is
you like them.
Hyperactive, which is the male version of nymphomania. You don't care.
You have
It's a
beer
wormhole.
goggles. You have
Taking
beer
it to
goggles on, and
hyperactive.
It's not even beer goggles. It's
I'll screw it.
this suits what I need.
No. Hyperactive is the Tiger Woods. Hypoactive is no sexual desire at all.
Which is strange for
No
men.
fantasies.
It's
no
strange
desire
for
sexual
everybody.
activity.
It's
strange for
not just-
everybody.
it's strange for everybody. It's strange for everybody to not want to engage in the act of breeding, which is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Here's something I didn't think I'd ever read. HSDD, which is hypoactive sexual desire disorder, has garnered much criticism, primarily by asexual activists. I just wanted that to sink in, that there are asexual activists in the world.
So there's people who want to have no sex.
I didn't.
No, they think they can breed by themselves. That's asexual.
I didn't even know that this was a thing. But
yeah, then like that's not in our species.
I don't know.
Asexuality is not in our species. There are species on Earth that can be asexual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
not ours.
doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's
They say they point out that HSDD puts asexuality in the same position homosexuality was from 1974 to 1987. I don't think that that's biologically normal.
Yeah, I have to disagree on this one. I am a person who is trying to become more socially conscious and more accepting of things like the sexual spectrum. But in this case, you know, we've encountered all sorts of interesting homosexual behaviors in other animals, and there's theories that it's part of a population control mechanism, and that's why it's naturally occurring, but it's a minority, and all that stuff. In this case, this is going completely against everything that genetics programs us to do, which is continue the species. So in this case, I think we can say no. This is an actual disorder. Homosexuality didn't belong in the DSM. This does.
Yeah. This is a little odd.
Yeah. Barring the knowledge that dolphins masturbate with headless fish or use pufferfish to get high, which are things that have been noted,
documented,
in zoos. And in the wild to have happened. Human beings are not asexual. Homo sapiens, I know it incurs the word homo, but that is not in reference to sexual orientation, just the Latin designation
scientific name for
our species.
Homo erectus.
This is we've stumbled into something that I think is going to need to be examined further at a different time.
Yes.
Because I was unaware that asexual activism was a thing.
Yeah.
So,
I was unaware of it too.
Because apparently there's even an asexual awareness week.
Barring acts of God,
did not know.
Women do not get pregnant spontaneously, and men do not become pregnant at all.
The
Unless they were born hermaphrodites and their chosen gender was male, but the female parts are still there.
Yeah.
And then they had sex.
Yeah.
Which got them pregnant.
This concept that you're referring to, parthenogenesis, the spontaneous development of a child in humans has been largely disproven. The chances of it happening and the child surviving through development are so small that there are so many zeros after that decimal point before you get to that one. It might as well not happen. You know.
That takes us to the next.
And if it does happen, we'll name the child Jesus, and that will be the end of it. But, aside from that, we can pretty much rule it out.
Gender dysphoria?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I was just reading gender dysphoria. This is more descriptive than the previous DSM. Gender identity disorder, and focuses on dysphoria as the clinical problem, not identity per se. Okay, it says there is one overarching diagnosis of gender dysphoria with separate developmentally appropriate criteria sets for children and for adolescents and adults. Disorders of sex development denotes conditions of inborn somatic deviation of the reproductive tract from the norm and are discrepancies among the biological indicators of male and female. Like the chick on Oprah Winfrey that she didn't know until she went to like the gynecologist, and then she had like they found a penis like up, like she thought she was a girl, and then
hermaphroditic.
Yeah.
Which
is that what that's what they're talking about?
Hermaphrodite is born with both male and female sex organs.
So are they part of the asexual?
No, it's still sexual. It's still there.
You still need to have sex with somebody else in order to be impregnated.
What this section is, gender dysphoria is you are one gender and you're not comfortable that way.
Yeah, there's been a lot of controversy in the past over this section because of the whole transgender community saying you putting this designation of mental illness onto someone who feels that they are a woman trapped in a man's body or whatever it is. It reinforces the whole binary sexual scale, and it dehumanizes them. But a great deal of research has been poured in this area, and they're starting to realize that just because you developed male does not necessarily mean, just because you have the male parts does not necessarily mean that the rest of your programming is male. You know?
Many people that suffer from gender dysphoria will eventually go through a gender reassignment surgery.
Yeah, the new DSM has fixed this problem of intolerance by saying that it's the only part of this that is a disorder is the discomfort that comes from physically being something other than what you mentally identify.
Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
Oh God.
Part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Part of the spectrum.
I said I was.
What?
I said I was from Iran. No, I said I wasn't. I used to be a man.
IT crowd.
Yes.
Great episode of the IT.
Oh, wow.
Okay, sorry.
That's love.
I'm not from Iran. I used to be a man.
I said I used to be a man. I thought you said you're from Iran.
That was hilarious.
Anyway.
Best episode.
So we got on to number 15, chapter 15,
disruptive impulse control and conduct disorders.
I think we just demonstrated that.
Yeah, you two are the poster children for that one. In our little group.
Conditions. You gotta have some fun, man. Shit.
This is a heavy topic.
It is. We need to lighten a little bit.
Include conditions involving problems in the self-control of emotions and behaviors. The disorders in this chapter are unique in that these problems are manifested in behaviors that violate the rights of others.
Example.
Aggression, destruction of property, and or that bring the individual into significant conflict with social norms or authority figures. Huh.
Yeah, so basically, your impulse control, it's only a problem. Your conduct disorder, they're only a problem when they violate the rights of others and they come in conflict with the society that you're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the neurosurgeon who brought an AR-15 into an airport recently.
That kind of breaks societal norms.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit. But it happened.
I mean, this. I guess this
you got open carry, right?
Open carry, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another episode. Okay, so...
I mean, I guess this could also be like Tourette's in a public environment. I mean, I know Tourette's is a thing. It's another thing. But I mean, if a kid has, or let's say a kid has Tourette's in school, it's affecting other people.
Well, I could certainly agree that, yeah.
I mean, it's just
Tourette's would fit all three of those: the disruptive impulse control and a conduct disorder. Yeah, but you know,
that's an uncontrollable situation. I understand that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's like that's a neurological tic as well. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tourette's is fascinating, actually. But okay, let's move on.
Substance-related and addictive disorders. I have to scroll down. Encompasses 10 separate classes of drugs: alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, hallucinogens, with separate categories for how do you say that? Phencyladine? Oh, Jesus. Or similarly acting
Yeah, that one.
Hallucinogens. Okay.
Hallucinogens, inhalants, opiates, sedatives, hypnotics. Anoxylics and whatever the fuck it is. Stimulants. Amphetamine-type substances, cocaine and other stimulants, tobaccos, and other unknown substances. People huffing paint fumes and stuff and white out and
any number of
The first word was arocylohexylamines.
Only the drunk one of the group can actually say that.
His tongue has been loosened by the vodka.
It sounds like a freaking ingredient in paint or something.
It could
probably is an ingredient of paint.
Or it's one of those chemicals derived from magic mushrooms or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is what we have in meth.
Yeah. So it's a pretty straightforward category. You're addicted to a substance.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing here is that this refers to the psychological addiction, because you can get a person, and I've seen it. You see it in the military all the time. Smokers, they go into boot camp. You can't smoke in boot camp. After however many days it is, you are no longer addicted to nicotine. Biologically speaking, by the end of boot camp, you've been in there long enough that it's all out of your system, and your body has adjusted to no longer being on nicotine. You are no longer a smoker. But psychologically, they can't overcome that compulsion. So they go right back to it when they get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you also get some of the other things, the oral fixation of just having that. There's several factors to being addicted to smoking. So, which is why it's a difficult habit for many people to break, because of so many different things. Like just having a smoke break, for instance, is often just the excuse somebody needs.
Thank you, Freud.
Yeah. Definitely lots of Freudian things there.
Lots of Freud going on.
So speaking of Freud, let's go on to neurocognitive disorders.
NCDs, referred to in the DSM-4 as dementia, delirium, amnestic, and other cognitive disorders. The NCD category encompasses the group of disorders in which the primary clinical deficit is in cognitive function, and they are acquired rather than developmental. So Alzheimer's, right?
Yeah, things of that nature. Yeah. Yeah, obviously that's a big category as well, but it's largely something that is dealt with and coped with more than ever probably cured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of
because
your brain is.
This is going down to genetics rather than I didn't get the toy at 2 years old.
This is it's been acquired after.
It's literally your chemistry changes at a certain point to say, hey, time to get fucked up on chemical X.
Yeah, that every 7-year new body kind of thing.
Yeah,
comes into play really heavily there. My new brain is not as good as my old brain.
This decade, you're not gonna have dopamine. Sorry, just your luck.
Yeah, terribly sorry. Yeah, we're gonna up the serotonin levels though, so you got that going for you. Which
there
probably
you go. But no dopamine.
Michael.
Would you like to close out our categories?
Well, if I can get this darn thing to stay open, Adobe's being an ass. Let me try it again.
Adobe.
Acrobat Reader.
Why are you an Acrobat Reader?
Should be in the show notes on Drive.
Because I was looking at the actual manual, the PDF that you gave us. That's why.
There is far too much.
Why would you do such a thing?
Well, because as much as I hate reading the damn thing, I was reading the damn thing.
Okay.
I hate going through this.
There is
this
too much.
sucker,
We must sum up.
There's too much. We must sum up. All right. So hang on. Where are we?
Number 18.
18.
Personality
disorders. Personality disorder, meaning an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectations of the individual's culture, is pervasive and inflexible, has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. Personality disorders are grouped into 3 clusters based on descriptive similarities. We have paranoid, schizoid, schizotypal disorders.
They actually specifically stated that they break them out into clusters.
Yeah.
And apparently you have to have something from each of these clusters in order to actually have an overarching personality disorder.
Yeah.
So that there's an interesting criteria here, which is why it's broken out as it is.
Yeah. This cluster A is these are the poster children for mental illness. The crazy guy on the street corner talking to himself is where you run into this one. Cluster B, antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. Let's see, cluster C is avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive disorders. Now let's go through these. In order. Paranoid personality disorder, a pattern of distrust and suspiciousness such that others' motives are always interpreted as malevolent. Schizoid personality disorders have a pattern of detachment from social relationships and a restricted range of emotional response. Schizotypal disorders show acute discovery of close relationships, cognitive or perceptual distortions, and various eccentricities of behavior. These are the people who see and hear people who are not there, and they believe things that simply are not real.
Sorry, Grandma.
If you ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, he was schizophrenic. That's a great example of it. Antisocial personality disorder, disregard for or violation of the rights of others. Borderline personality disorder, a pattern of instability in interpersonal relationships as well as self-image, and a marked impulsivity. Histrionic personality disorder covers excessive emotionality and attention-seeking behavior. Narcissistic personality disorder is a pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy towards others. Avoidant personality disorder involves social inhibition, feelings of inadequacy, and hypersensitivity to negative evaluation. Dependent personality disorder, a pattern of submissive and clinging behavior related to an excessive need to be taken care of. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder is, as we have previously touched on, a pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and control. Personality change due to another medical condition. Personality disturbance that is judged to be due to the direct physiological effects of a medical condition, such as a lesion in the brain. Other specified personality disorder and unspecified personality disorder provides for two situations. The individual's personality pattern meets the general criteria for a personality disorder, and the traits of several different personality disorders are present, but the criteria for any specific personality disorder is not met. Or the individual's personality pattern meets the general criteria for a personality disorder, but the individual is considered to have a personality disorder that is not included in this classification.
Like passive-aggressive personality disorder as the example.
Yes.
So that was definitely a mouthful. Thank you for plowing through it. Personality disorders, we are very familiar with personality disorders through our pop culture of just these are the crazy people. You know, quote unquote, these are the crazy people.
There were two spots in there where that's what she said was appropriate.
Yeah, if you want to go there. I think we all these habitual kind of personality traits, you know, they are traits. Everyone has a little bit of this in there somewhere. It again becomes a disorder when it is beyond the societally accepted norms, you know, things that are then infringing upon the rights of others and basically making a mess of things.
That's when we call it malware.
When it is pervasive, it inhibits your daily life and you know, all that good stuff.
Otherwise, you know, many of these things in moderation make for a well-rounded person. Believe it or not, it's true. Mm-hmm. You know, because you have to have a little bit of narcissistic personality so that you do have delusions of grandeur, so that you can be a Jedi.
I am a Jedi.
Well, you know,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know, it's everything in moderation, and you know, everything has its place. You mentioned narcissistic. Well, that's just a case of having excessively high self-esteem. You think, yeah, look at me, I'm this awesome. Well, everyone needs to have a little self-esteem to get through the day. This is just too much.
Yeah, exactly.
This is I can run through walls.
Just looking in the mirror and going, God, I'd love to have sex with myself, you know?
That's
the only thing that would really satisfy me.
And that comes into the next one.
Yes, let's move on to chapter 19, because otherwise
paraphilic disorders.
All right, give me a second.
Yeah,
paraphilic disorders. Michael, go.
Hang on.
Why aren't you with us?
Shut up! My browser's acting up, you jackasses.
having sex, wanting to have sex with yourself probably would fit right in with that.
Well, I don't know if it would because paraphilia is the experience of intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, and. It's. I guess you could argue that it's atypical, but you're still at least attracted to a person. But I guess
there are people out there that want to have sex with their car.
Yeah, and that definitely falls.
And they try, or they want to have sex with a pool, and then they end up on the news.
Yeah. Paraphilic disorders include voyeuristic disorder, exhibitionistic disorder.
That'd be exposing the genitals.
Yeah. People who get off on watching when not being seen. People who get off on being watched. Froteuristic disorder, which is
great words in here.
You get off on contact with non-consenting individuals. Sexual masochism disorder. Sexual masochism disorder, the sub-side of the sub-dom dynamic. Sexual sadism disorder, which is the dom side of the sub-dom dynamic. Pedophilic disorder, which is just gross. Fetishistic disorder, using non-living objects or having a highly specific focus on non-genital body parts.
The pool.
The feet.
Intake.
Foot fetish.
Well, the fetishist thing, when you're talking about the pool intake, that may just simply be getting your rocks off.
Yeah.
I don't think
say that's that hotel where something happened.
Well, yeah, but I don't think you're necessarily attracted to the pool.
No, just
where
the
the pool
intake
is
port.
so damn sexy that you have to fuck the pool. I don't think
Not
that's
the pool, just the intake port.
No, I don't think that's the way it is, though.
I don't think that's what was going on there.
Hoover. That's different. I don't think that would be this disorder. I think that's just I'm going to stick it in and see what happens.
Because.
Because. I don't even know that that's a disorder. That's just a guy thing, I think.
Like the vacuum cleaner,
That's just weird. I'm not. Whatever.
You thought about it, though.
Vacuum cleaner?
That was on.
Nope, I thought better because I saw the news report.
I have never looked at any of these objects and gone, that'd be a good idea to try this. It just seems like bad news bears.
Like that one movie, the guy puts his dick in the pie or whatever the heck it is.
There you go.
American Pie.
A warm apple pie. Mm-hmm.
They actually did that.
And
so they could get the actual reaction.
Wow.
That's
you got to make sure it's not fresh out of the oven, though.
It burns. It's not good. It's not good.
Apple pie filling sticks like napalm, apparently.
Ooh.
Okay,
so moving on. Sorry.
Squishy and wouldn't it be like super squishy?
That's transvestic disorders, and that's like cross-dressing.
Yeah.
That's the last one of that list.
You want to feel pretty.
There you
Hey,
go.
I mean,
I'm not pretty.
if the head of the FBI could do it, why can't you?
Come on.
Paraphilic disorder. Who wants to read it?
We just did that.
We just did that.
Where we just were.
On to other mental disorders.
Other mental disorders.
Good. You have reached 3 sheets to the wind drunk.
You really have.
Yeah, you're there.
Wow.
That was a little too much.
That was the most slurred. What? How many? How many?
I don't know.
I've
12?
every time I look up, you seem to be taking a shot, and we've been going for like 2 hours now.
This bottle was more full before we started.
Oh dear. Okay. I'm glad I had you go first.
Yes.
Or else this would have gone downhill, really.
It would have been very comedic, but it wouldn't have done justice to the topic.
No.
Okay.
You were
Let's move
drinking vodka and
So
eating.
read the next section.
20, the last section that we're going to cope with, and then we'll wrap this puppy up.
Alrighty. There is of course their catch-all category, other mental disorders. This residual category applies to presentations in which symptoms characteristic of mental disorders that cause significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning predominate but do not meet the full criteria for any other mental disorder. Basically, it's just
it's other.
This is where you go when there is some disruption present that they just can't pin down. You've got something wrong is going on, but they haven't figured it quite out yet.
Yeah, they can't figure it out to being
We don't know
physical
what the fuck's
element.
wrong with you.
Yeah.
But we know it's wrong. Enough
Topics
to
for
say
the-
that there's something wrong.
Topics for the DSM-6.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where that goes.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's where that goes.
Now,
DSM-5 or DSM-6?
we are in the DSM-5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, should you want your own copy of the DSM legally, it's going to cost you about $120. It's not a cheap reference.
That's what she said.
But many things in the medical field are often characterized as moving a decimal point for the value of something.
Kind of like college books.
So exactly like college books, especially college medical books.
Yeah, that just takes it another decimal point.
Exactly.
College, then medical. That's to the.
Yeah. In ebook form, this should really only be about $15. However, as it is, it's presented as $150. So that's pretty much the way it is. However, it is a wealth of information, and really, I found it as a layperson with at least enough scientific knowledge to not completely torque at all this information. I found it pretty digestible. It makes some good sense, and I could sense the order of things and the progression of things. So it's well done. They've done a great job. Obviously, they've had 5 tries, so this is pretty good.
6 will even be better.
Absolutely.
Just don't start diagnosing yourself. Don't do it. Don't even be tempted to do it because you will feel horrible at the end of it.
Well, there is a degree that you have to self-diagnose because you have to realize that there's a problem so that you can then take it to a professional and get help.
But that's really where you need to stop it. You need to look at yourself and say, this doesn't feel right to me. Right. I'm going to go talk to someone who has education on the matter and have them figure out precisely what's wrong.
Yeah, somebody that spent some time in this biz. We were going to have such a person on, but they were not able to make it. And I was going to ask them about what kind of best practices there would be. But since we don't have that expert opinion, I did ask her what she wanted everyone as a takeaway to be. And that is that anyone that's suffering mental illness is actually suffering. It is not something that's being played. It's not a game. It's a real physical and mental suffering. And
it's not fun. They're not getting any enjoyment out of it.
It is not quirky or fun or interesting. It sucks.
Yeah. Now, you may feel that being around such a person makes them quirky or interesting or eccentric or anything like that. And that may be well the case. However, at a certain level, that person needs some help. And you, being their friend, might need to tell them they need it. Okay? Yeah. You're an amateur. Be supportive. But always urge them to go seek a professional. Like, hey, maybe you ought to get that looked at. And always be friendly. It's really hard to address somebody
in a positive manner
and tell them that something is wrong with them and that they need a doctor. People don't react well to that kind of response typically.
No.
So, as hard as it is, sometimes you've got to do it, and you got to be careful with how you do it. Otherwise, you're going to alienate your entire friendship that you're basing that information on. You may be the best person overall to tell the person, but they may simply not take it very well. But don't dismiss them if they come to you with a problem either.
Yeah.
It's your chance to help them, and you should. But it's not going to necessarily be easy. And it's not your place to fix them. Okay? Don't ever take that upon yourself either. You can't fix them. In many times, nobody is going to be able to fix them. The only thing you can ever hope for is to help them.
Yeah.
So, where should they go? They should go seek a doctor. Like my story, I saw my family practitioner. In my case, I did not have to then be referred to a further specialist. I did not have to have any CAT scans, MRIs, fMRIs, any weird things done to me to evaluate anything else that was going on. I got extremely lucky. I don't anticipate anybody else to necessarily have that kind of luck. But it starts with the conversation. You got to present yourself and your case to the professional. And if they don't appear to be listening, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a conversation. You can't just talk to somebody, and if they just immediately give you a pill,
that's
a problem. There might
not
be
help.
A very serious problem.
Yeah, that's not help.
No. you gotta talk it through.
Yeah, I was
Because
in.
your situation is special.
They should ask at least a half dozen questions.
It should be 3 to 6 months from first session to diagnosis. It really should be, because it takes that long to figure it out. I was in the military when I was diagnosed, and this is one of those things where we get to the always be supportive and never insist that it's nothing. It's only very recently in the military that they've started doing this, where they've ingrained this into the chain of command that it does not matter what you think of this individual's behavior. If they come to you behind closed doors and say, "Look, I think I really need help," you need to take that fucking shit seriously. And I knew when I went and talked to my chief, because I was having some disruption in my work, and he noticed it, and he called me in to talk to him, because that's his job,
Mhm.
And part of the job of the chain of command is to notice when your guys are in trouble and get them assistance. And we have counselors in the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation office just for that purpose. And in 9 cases out of 10, it's just, military lifestyle is rough. They need to talk to somebody. They need to change something up, and they move on, and they're fine. And I came in and talked to him, and I could see in his expression, he thought I was just like. His instinct was that I was just like every other guy. I was just having a hard time. There was nothing seriously wrong, and I was going to get over it. But he didn't tell me that. Actually, he did tell me that. He said, "Look, I see this all the time, and this is what I think is going on. But we're not taking any chances. So here's your referral. Go to MWR, see what the counselor thinks." And the counselors, and after... God, I was in his office for 4 hours, and after 4 hours, he said, "You know what? I'm writing you a referral to General Medical." And I took that back to my chief, and he was like, "Well, see, and that's why we did this, because I was wrong." And I went to General Medical, and I saw the base psychiatrist for months before he finally said, "Okay, this is what's going on, and at this point, you can't be in the service anymore." So, it is not that is on the flip. We're on the flip side of the conversation. For someone who thinks they may be suffering, understand that it is not a quick fix.
No, you have to have a lot of patience,
and
it's hard. You got to have patience with yourself.
Yeah,
you have to somehow still manage to pep talk yourself through a long, drawn-out process of repair.
And it's hard and it's daunting, but at the same time, you are doing something about it, and just clinging on to that little bit can help you get through it. It's like, I am taking charge of my life. I am doing something about this, and that can be motivating if you let it be. So, please do.
Absolutely, and reach out.
First things to get you through.
Yeah, and reach out. There are. Thanks in part to how horribly we've actually treated those with mental illness in this country, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of resources available to those that just have to look. It's almost like I'm going to type in "please help with mental illness" in Google. And you're going to find pages and pages and pages of actual helpful resources.
The first one that came up for me, and this actually came across my Tumblr dash, there is a website called the mentalsupportcommunity.net. The forums for this organization is urgent need. If you are having a crisis, and it's most often a suicidal crisis. But if you are having a crisis and you feel like you are staring at that 6-foot drop, go here and you will get instant support. You will get advice. It is mostly amateurs and other sufferers, but there are a couple of professionals on there. You will hear what you need to hear. You are not alone. We think this is what's going on. It's fixable. And go find a doctor in your area, and some people will even provide links if they happen. I've briefly cruised through here in the past, and I've seen people say, "Hey, you live in my area. Go see this guy. He's good." You know, stuff like that. That's valuable. Yeah, and that's, again, because according to politicians in this country, mental illness is shameful. It has been up to the people to independently create these support structures, and there are tons of them out there.
Yeah, and they're all equally good in certain areas. You know, obviously there's going to be some that are better than others. Your mileage may vary, but we've provided a big list that's going to be in the show notes, and I don't know really what I'm trying to establish here, other than here's a place that you can go if you think that you need help, and if you think that someone else may need help, you know,
you can go here too.
Yeah, it's for everyone. It really is for everyone, because we all go through rough patches in life. We don't have an instruction manual for people for how to do this. So there's lots of ways to screw up, but there's also lots of ways to be okay. So we're just trying to give you another way to be okay. A lot of ways to go with it. So with that, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. So please go out, if you're just hearing about this second or third hand, don't know how you necessarily did that, but go out to our website, www.orlyradio.com. This is episode 20, in case you hadn't noticed. And check the show notes for that. There's a ton of resources in there, including the entire review that we did of the DSM. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think, if anything, it'll give you an anchor in some sort of reality that you can cling to and pull yourself back up. There's a lot to look at. It can be mind-boggling. One sentence at a time.
Yeah. Special thanks to Tumblr user Mental Illness Mouse, who is responsible for compiling this list that came across my dash that I have provided for the show notes. It's very comprehensive. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So thanks to him, her, whoever you are.
Yes, thank you very much for all the work that you've done. Should you ever be listening to this, hey, go ahead and drop us a line, and hey, may we'd have you as a guest. So with that, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye. That's it for us tonight. We hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed making it. This is the part where I beg for audience participation. Head over to ORlyRadio.com. That's ORLY radio.com and participate in the live stream. Chat with us during the show on our IRC, and if you have topic ideas, email them to us at ORlyRadioPodcast@gmail.com. Leave us a voicemail at 470-222-ORLY6759 and post and vote on stories on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/ORlyRadio. And if that wasn't enough, we're all over the web. Check out our Facebook page, our Twitter, our Tumblr, our Google+, and even video of the show archived at youtube.com. Consider leaving us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, or if you really love us, consider help offset the cost of the show by contributing on our Patreon page, accessible through the Help Us link on our homepage. We really can't thank you enough for spending time with us. Until next time, this has been ORly Radio, part of the Cowan Services Network. Music Rocket and Pangea provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incomptech.com. And this ends our broadcast day.